Well, it's been, I guess, about 15 weeks since I really preached the sermon, and so what's another week, right? But I thought as we were talking this week, or as we were putting things together this week, what do I want to do the first Sunday back? And so I just had this idea, well, let's just do what we've been doing one more time. Luis, you want your phone? And so I got a few things I want to say, and then we're just going to open it up to anyone else. And also, if you're watching on Facebook, and we've got a lot of people on Facebook, feel free to chirp in, give a one-sentence testimony. I'll read it on the phone if you comment, and we'll just go that way. Are we about 6 feet apart?
Maybe I should.
Yeah, yeah. Let me get my water just in case.
2 arms length.
2
arms length.
2 arms length? Okay. Your arms are mine.
I know.
One of the highlights for me, at least, I guess, out of all this COVID was once a week, more than once a week, but at least once a week, hanging out with Kevin, doing our discussion, our lesson, and all the help, Brad and Jessica with the sound, getting your comments about what was in the background. You know, at first it started out being an accident. First time Michael sang with us and we recorded Michael, there was like brooms and everything in the background, and people gave me a hard time about that. So then we started placing stuff on purpose in the background just to see. No, the diapers were an accident. Play on word there. Diapers accident. You got it. The milk was an accident also. But anyway, so you could tell we're not professionals doing this, but it was a lot of fun and a lot of positive comments about that approach. You know, I had one discussion with a guy who was pastor of a large church, and I was telling him, he was asking what we were doing on Sundays, and I explained to him our format of just having this conversation because we don't have the ability to do a production, you know, just like he did, and just have this conversation. And he said, you know, after our first week, the response we got back was, why don't you just sit at home with a Facebook and just talk? And so he said, so what you're doing is really what people wish that we would do instead of having the big, trying to have a big production. So, Kevin, that's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun just doing the podcast with you. But the last about 13 times, right, that we did it, that's just been a lot of fun. It's been a highlight for me. And Brad and Jessica, thank you for your help in all of that. And so we're going to do it again this week. But we do want to open it up for you to share. But the question is, you know, it's been 3 months. So what has God taught you in the last 3 months? And I'll let you go first if you want to say anything.
Oh, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to try and make sense of. I don't know if everybody else is kind of having the same struggle of, all right, so what am I supposed to glean from 3 months? I feel like I've had a privileged situation and everybody should do church this way, where you meet once a week one-on-one with your pastor and your best friend, and you guys like talk about God and the Bible, and you get an outline, you know, days in advance to come into the conversation. So I'm grateful for the last 15 weeks or so. Like, it's just spiritually, personally, it doesn't feel like the shutdown has been a negative for me, although there's negatives to it. One thing, I mean, you mentioned the going door to door in the giving communion to the community, and that was one thing that I learned is when you hear it once that, you know, Jesus said, take of the bread and do this and that, but when you hear it 15 times in a row, it starts to sound like, and then Jesus took of the bread, said, take of the bread, and you take of the bread and you do this with the bread, and it started to sound Italian and everything. I was like, oh man, you stand there with the garbage bag holding it. But it was an impactful time to be out in the community.
Louis and I could write a book on our experience.
Oh, I'm sure.
Of doing communion in the neighborhood. Yeah, there was one Hispanic family that we would stop at every week, and that was fun watching Luis be able to do communion completely in Spanish. Yeah. So that was fun. I thought I was in Honduras every week. So thank you.
I mean, I had a few thoughts. I'd really love to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody here today, because we've kind of been in this isolated bubble at the community center. For me, a big one is just realizing that somebody else's reality may not be my own reality, and then how do you exist in that? How do you love people through that? And in the midst of the quarantine and the illness part of it, that's like one aspect. But then you throw into it the racial aspect and the turmoil in our country at this time. And I look at my hometown in Washington State. It's like 1 in 13 people are testing positive for coronavirus. So their reality is not my reality. On the reservation where Mandy's from, people are burying 2-3 members of their own family plus. That reality isn't my reality. For our friends who are people of color, their reality is not my reality. People who work in law enforcement or have friends that are in law enforcement, that reality is not my own reality. So it's like we've been thrown in this situation where God says, all right, your reality isn't somebody else's reality necessarily. So how do you empathize? How do you love them through the midst of it? And how do we as believers support each other in that? Because we've seen, you see it on the news. There's fighting amongst believers in churches on when should we go back to church? When should we meet in person? How do we provide food and clothing and all the necessities for people when we're being told that we should be in isolation or keeping this distance? So it's like I've really seen how we were not, I believe, created to be in isolation. We were not created to exist at a distance from our neighbor. Iron cannot sharpen iron from a distance. Although we try to do the church service and we try to connect virtually and all of that. But I don't feel like I have a good answer on that. But I feel like that's what's really stirred up in me is just seeing how different we all are. And how in that difference, that's a good thing, and God doesn't call us to just be all the same, but He does call us to love everybody in the midst of that. So, I got to walk with you and Luis throughout the neighborhood. I got to do cookouts at the community center, or we would do the podcast. We would do the video streaming for the church. We would do different things, and some people will agree with your tactics or your strategy. Some people will disagree, and I think we've seen some people will disagree for out of love for their fellow mankind, and some out of I don't want to be oppressed by my government. So it's like you really have to evaluate your motivations on, am I doing this to love my neighbor the best I possibly can, or am I succumbing to some lesser ulterior motive, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I was telling some people this morning, one of the big miracles for me over the pandemic was really being able to house the homeless people in the hotel that we did. And when the local emergency management contacted me about this and said, and I said, look, let us organize it. We'll organize it. We'll pay for it, and with the promise that at some point in time we'll get reimbursed. That hasn't happened yet. And I thought that it would be a couple weeks, and I sent out an email saying it would cost about $10,000. And people responded. And I remember in like 48 hours, I had $15,000 that had come in online. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? I've got more money than I asked for. Now I got to contact all these people and say, can I spend your money somewhere else? And so I thought, well, I got to put a small thing on every email that says any money left over will go toward this, so I wouldn't have to do that anymore. But it's because I didn't know what I was doing, because it ended up being 35 nights, not a couple weeks. 35 nights, 52 different people in the hotel, buying them one meal a day and paying full price plus a hefty tip to help the restaurants and caterers. And so in 35 nights, it ended up costing $65,000. Was how much it cost to house the people for that long. But we raised $67,000, which was like, whoa. And every time I had to write a large check to the hotel, the money was already there. And so I saw that as a miracle that God just provided. And I've told people, when you take care of the least of these, God will provide. And so that was fun. Now, for me personally, the last 3 months have been difficult on a number of different levels, and God has taught me a lot. And some of the things I didn't really like, what He taught me. As I said, I was in Mississippi at a retreat the 1st of March with Christian Community Development Association, which Dr. Perkins was a founder of. So I was at his place with 12 other people, a cohort that we've gotten together, doing some leadership stuff. And then was supposed to go on a cruise with Misty. And when we got to New Orleans, we found out it was canceled. So we spent the weekend in New Orleans, and then came back, and not knowing what to do. I mean, I felt completely lost because I didn't know what the day was supposed to be like. Because now we're not having church. We're supposed to stay socially distant. We can't go to places, and I was lost. I mean, I'm a routine-oriented person, and so I'm out of my routine, not knowing what to do. And so the idea came to me to go do communion on Sundays. But to be quite honest, I just did it because I could not stand the thought of not doing something on Sunday. I couldn't. That just didn't compute in my head that it's Sunday and I'm just supposed to sit around all day and not do anything. And so this idea, let's go do communion. And we tried to practice social distance. We didn't go door to door. You know, it was just people in the neighborhood who were outside, and then some people who I knew, you know, personal relationships. And I asked them, can I come to your house for communion? And they did, and then people started looking for us. And I think, we didn't keep count, but I think it was well over 500 people. Same people every week, but 500 communions, you know, one-on-one.
Interactions.
Yeah, or on groups of 3 or 4. You know, it was a couple hours every Sunday just walking the neighborhood. That it became very, very meaningful, but it started because I had to do something. And so I think what God taught me in that is, and this is a confession, because I think it's a sin, all right? So I'm confessing a sin. But what God taught me was that my identity, who I was wrapped up in what I do and not in Him. And when what I do got taken away, I felt lost. Now that may not make sense to you, but it was a big lesson for me that my identity has to be in Jesus, not what I do. And so the verse of Scripture that kind of came to my mind during all this, and I'll share with you, is Galatians 2, verse 20, where Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. And over the years, I've told this story a bunch. You may not remember it, but I have told it a bunch, that when I was a young pastor, before I took this pastorate in 1989, I think it was, I took a pastor friend out, an older pastor friend who was kind of a mentor to me, and I took him out to lunch and said, you know, okay, what's the one piece of advice you could give me? And he said, Kevin, always remember this. Your walk with Christ is more important than your work for Christ. And I have said that, and I have said that I believe that. But God showed me that I didn't really believe that, because too much of my self-worth was based in what I do, my work. And that was taken away. And so anyway, so you can pray for me about that, because God's still doing a work on me. He's teaching me humility by leaving the air on heat instead of air conditioning. So He's teaching me humility, but He's also teaching me that, you know what, you are who you are because of Jesus, not what you do or what you don't do. And that was a tough lesson. And hopefully I can remember that. But that said, I'm thrilled to be back. to be back, and this is for me, this is a big deal, just to be back in some type of public worship. And I told people, I said, I really don't expect 20 people to be here this Sunday, and we've exceeded that. So, hey, thank you so much. But anyway, so if you can go ahead and get the handheld. We want to hear from you. You know, what's happened the last 3 months, or you know, what has God taught you? What has He shown you during this time? So just raise your hand, and Kevin will bring the microphone to you. We have a new soundboard, so we're getting issues worked out.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, it's been a journey walking with Pastor Kevin every Sunday. He already confessed his sins, so I'm gonna confess mine too. Nobody's watching me anyway, so nobody who's well, yeah, they'll catch who I am, right? At first, when he asked me if I wanted to walk with him, do a communion, I was like, what is this? This is not Baptist. This is not the way we do communion in our church where I coming from. So it took me probably 2 times to get adjusted and to really enjoy it what we were doing, because I saw his passion and the way he was enjoying it. I was like, and I remember the first time we went to this Hispanic house, and we invited them to participate in communion, and the parents didn't want to do it, but they allowed their kid to do it. I was like, that was excited. The little boy wanted to do it, and that was experience. You know, every time we were doing it, I had to bring my phone and open my Bible on my phone to read in English everything. But when I watched the Spanish family, I was like, okay, I don't need my phone because I know this by memory and I know this in Spanish, which took me the whole 2 months to not even memorize in English. Anyway, my experience with this walk and my journey, it was like every single Sunday was a different story. It was a different experience, and you can experience God in different ways. We started with just a few people, and the last 3 Sundays, it took us more than 2 hours, Pastor, just walking around because people were asking us to come to their house and pray for them and let them participate in communion. And then after all this movement of COVID-19, then it happens, but with the George Floyd movement. Reading this morning one of the books of John Perkins, where he say, I think the church needs a new movement. And I was thinking, I think the new movement is coming right now. Well, no, this is what he says. Say, my prayer is that this church will come with a new movement. And I think John Perkins' prayer answer is coming. He's coming a new movement for our church. Because if you see the church how it's been doing right now, everybody's preaching on Facebook, everybody's doing communion on Facebook, everybody's doing, at home, we see the screams every Sunday. It's a new movement for our church. And I think we're very close to see Jesus coming.
Yeah, now if you don't know, some of the things that were going on at the community center is on Tuesdays there was a lunch every Tuesday that the Daughters of the King did out of our church, and then on Thursdays, food distribution that Sam put together. Has that been over a year yet? Where on Thursdays we've done a food distribution? Over 2 years. And so Tuesdays there was a lunch. Every Thursday there was a food distribution. The food distribution still going on, and then every Friday we would cook hamburgers and hot dogs, and it was just kind of a drive-through. They were already boxed up, and then people would come and take it and go. And so at least 3 days a week we were helping in the community. The food distribution is still going on. Everything else is kind of stopped right now. Once we did everything through May, so when June got here, we kind of pulled back on some of that. But there was a lot of ministry taking place during this COVID that our church just tried to keep doing. But someone else, raise your hand and Kevin will bring you the mic. Come on, I want to hear from you. All right.
Public speaking terrifies me, so I'm going to try. You know, when this whole the COVID-19 thing started, and we were all kind of pushed into our houses, and schools were closed, and I've always considered myself to be a very intentionally being a very grateful person. What my ability came to be grateful for was really brought down to very basic things. And I have an appreciation for those things in a way that God taught me that I had no idea I could be grateful for, if that makes sense. So, you know, the ability to have someone to watch my kids so that I could go to work was taken away. So when I was able to actually find that and go to work, I was so grateful because it gave me the ability to provide for my kids. So walking into my office was something I was grateful for. Well, you know, I was always grateful for that, but not in that way. Food, the ability to just have food, especially when, you know, the kind of the distribution system of food kind of stopped for a second. I never thought I'd be grateful for toilet paper, and that happened. You know, and connection and people. I lost several people close to me during this time, and there was no ability to grieve together, and so finding different ways to connect with family was something I've been very grateful for. So I am while this whole time has been very difficult, I appreciate that my ability for gratitude has been widened by Jesus and what he's taught me. And then, you know, then this second wave of oppression and Black Lives Matter, and I honestly don't even know what that's teaching me yet. I just want to listen. I'm just trying to listen. I want to be able to teach my girls. I want to be able to hear other perspectives, and I don't even know what it's teaching me yet. Yeah. But I'm grateful to have the opportunity to listen. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, on the screen, I don't know if you can tell the picture, but that's the COVID virus at the top, and the bottom is the protest in Nashville, because that's the two things that have happened since March from us. But anyway, someone else.
I'd be curious if, I don't know if this one's still on or not. Is there anybody or multiple people, and you can raise your hands or you could speak, do you feel like this time has brought you closer to God, or has it actually, do you feel more distant from God? And I think either response is valid. We did a podcast with Curtis Zachary, and he kind of used the analogy of this time is a time to recalibrate and go, all right, was I placing too much importance on church or the building or meeting with people? You know, I have my thoughts, but I would rather hear other people's thoughts on, did it actually draw you closer in, you know, Zoom conversations and, you know, and needing that connection? Or do you feel like, oh no, I felt like I was drifting away on this iceberg and I need that in-person contact? I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Yay.
Actually, I guess I better take this off. Actually, I think it brought me closer to God. And I feel like I got closer to the members because I felt that I needed that Zoom to stay connected to you guys. Even if because the building doesn't matter. It's about the people that's in the building. So I really did having that conversation, even if it wasn't really a church service, just having that connection to you guys that usually came in on Zoom. I wish more had came in, but I was glad with the ones that did come in. So I have to say that it brought me closer. And from this experience being out, again, I said, I don't know what I would have been. It was driving me crazy. I couldn't go to church. It was driving me crazy that I had to listen to church on, on Zoom when I wanted to be here with you guys and I couldn't. Because like you said, sitting around doing nothing on Sunday, it was driving me up a wall. And then at the same time, I was telling everybody I had broke my foot. So when this happened, I had to be stuck in the house anyway. But it was double the thing because of COVID. And then this thing with George Floyd, me and Julie got to talking and we decided to do the book thing because it's important. And I'm so amazed that it's not just here in the United States that they're marching. It's gotten all over the world they're marching. I was so amazed. It really made me feel happy. It didn't make me feel sad. It made me feel happy because more people are getting involved. More people are getting tired of black men being brutally murdered by police and even some women. So I was happy to see that. I couldn't partake in the marches, but I was just so happy about it. And I'm feeling like maybe there will be a change soon because even in this book, the same thing is happening right now. Right now, it's still happening. And I hope when my grandchildren grow up that there will be a change, that people will come together. We won't have the police brutality that's happening. We won't have so many people hating each other, that they will stand together and love one another. That's what I'm hoping.
Now,
then
if any
whoever's
church knows
next.
a building's not important, it's us, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, facing this, when being a musician, my income completely just disappeared. There was tours and different things that I was supposed to do this summer, and everything just, was gone. And I just saw God supernaturally make a way, and people called when before COVID was happening. I've been in Nashville since 2009. So when this year started, we got out of the holiday season. For the first time in a very large way, I just started getting calls for work, and everything was starting to roll. And my phone would just ring, and it would be somebody, can you come do this? And can you come to do this? Can you come do this? Can you come here? And so it just kept starting to really pick up. Well, all that just immediately stopped. So I was having like the most successful year I'd had to this point. So then I just saw God supernaturally make a way, and just saw resources and things happen. But I did face a lot of loneliness, depression, and hopelessness and uncertainty. Just watching, being in the house too long, and then also being challenged to get out in front of different habits I was trying to break, and eating better and doing different things. And then I would go into a lot of music work and recording and stuff, then just burn myself out because I would just work nonstop because I thought, oh my goodness, I can be productive. And then I would just get exhausted from pushing too much. So it was a real challenge to find out that I wasn't as strong as I had hoped. That I was really being, the surroundings and the circumstances that were normal before all this kind of had me fooled, and that I wasn't as strong as I wish I was. But little by little, I was able to get my focus back and, find out what was causing the anxiety and just get the peace of God. And I did some cleanses and fasting and stuff like that. And so I feel like God just walked with me through it. But it was a season of testing. It really was.
Well, ladies first, right? Isn't it?
We have a disagreement. Good morning. I would just say this time brought me closer to God. With all the things going on with Katie, and God brought us through that, and now Katie is healed, and it's just been so good and wonderful. And the time that we been going through all this, people used to look at me and say, "Oh, start speaking Spanish," like Spanish to me, and I'm like, "I am not. I wish I can speak." And they're like, "Where you from?" And I'll say, "Africa." They're like, "You don't look like you're from Africa." I'm like, "Well, I am from Africa." But it was like, I was down at the church community center, and a lot of people were afraid to come there because they did not understand Spanish. Well, I didn't understand Spanish too, so we were all afraid to come and see each other. But through this COVID-19, our community center was first a community center, then it was a social center, whatever center people call it. But God took that away through this time, and it made it into a resource center. Because everything that people need in the Natchez community area, over at Chickasaw community, everywhere people will tell people to go to the community center on Natchez Street. Whether it was toilet paper, paper towels, fish oil, or cooking oil, canned goods, diapers was the big thing. So there was more of about a resource center than anything else. So we are grateful for God to put us right there in the middle. We didn't know why our center was placed there, but God had all this. His plans were bigger than what we know. He knew that center's going to be there, and it's going to be a resource center for the people, because when this happened, people could, when my vehicle is there, they know I was there. So I will have coming in for 5 minutes, I will stay there for 5 hours. So it was a good thing. So I'm just grateful that God could use us in a way that He wanted to use us, not the way that we wanted to be there, but the glory of God to be there. So, and I'm grateful that people know now I'm from Africa, and I'm not from Mexico or all that, but I would like to speak Spanish really. See that I look like one Hispanic also, but yeah, I'm from Africa, so I know everybody like it now. Sam from Africa, so that's my new name. Oh, sorry.
I think God is trying to tell us something, that in a way to where with COVID-19 and what's going on now, I think He's trying to take us back to understand that we the people are the church, and not the buildings. The buildings don't mean nothing at all if we are not a part of God's work. And the Bible is more important than all the big to me, I spoke to Pastor Wilson, and we came up with this to where the church has become more of an entertainment for people. And I think God is trying to tell us that, I'm the person that you need to listen to and follow. And everything, the buildings and all the bands and all the music and all that doesn't mean anything. And so I think God is trying to teach us to go back to the Bible. I think that's why everything is happening the way it is right now.
Thank you, Mervyn. Yeah, during this whole time, I kept telling people, you got to find a balance between social distancing and social compassion. And and there are some things you just cannot do from a distance. That human touch, one of the things that I did learn with doing communion was just that human touch. Very, very brief, but just that human touch with somebody. You can't do that through Zoom or through anything else. Sometimes you have to, you have to be with people. And I think the building obviously does not matter, but there is something about coming together with people, and that strengthens your faith, or at least I hope, you feel that. And the Bible tells us in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25, let us not give up meeting together as some are doing, especially as the day is approaching, as we're getting closer and closer to Christ's return. Let us not give up meeting together. And so, who knows what the future holds, but it's good to be back in God's place. We got time for one more if somebody else wants to share, but then I want us to pray.
I got the microphone here.
Prayer.
I'll give it to you. I'll be real quick. When this COVID-19 started, I believe the majority of families, they were in the house probably only to sleep, especially couples. We will see each other just at the end of the day or in the morning, and good morning, honey, good evening, honey, see you later. Can you just imagine just being with my wife 3 months without getting out of the house, in the house, all day, all night, communicating, not communicating, like looking like strangers, and then, oh, you're my wife, you're my husband. And then my daughter was there. My daughter, after she's been out of the house for years, and then she came at the right time and the right moment, right before COVID, and stayed in the house. So being with my wife and my daughter in the house, and this is my testimony, but it's been many people's testimonies about, now I know who my wife is. Now I know who my daughter is. And I believe this is a kind of communication in where the church can start or can begin at home.
All right. Last one.
I feel like this time is like really questioning, because there was such a break in church that we weren't here for a while, and it made us like take faith into our own hands, because we have like the weekly Zooms, and you have the podcasts that you can listen to, and there's other churches that we can watch, but it's really about finding it by yourself. And I feel like, because I've called my friends about it, and I've talked to my camp friends to try to see where they're at in their faith, because I've been lacking. I feel like this time has made me grow distant with God, because I've never really had to take my faith in my own hands, because I've always had family to be there to say, well, we're going to church, and I'm like, okay, well, it's Sunday, it's what we do. But without it, I'm just like kind of growing apart from it, because I've never had to really sit down with my Bible and be like, okay, what is God trying to teach me? And with the whole George Floyd thing, I mean, it's raised a lot of questions in my mind, like, why would God really allow this? And what was going through the cop's head? And there's a lot of questions that got raised. And then with the COVID, it's just, I feel with my generation, it really does bring a struggle and bring a gap with God. And I don't know, there's just a lot of questions to see where we're all at. So yeah, that's.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right, well, let's stand and let's read our prayer. And as we read our prayer, really, really think about it in context of what we've been experiencing over the last 3 months. Okay? So read this with me. As we leave this place of worship and fellowship, may our prayers be the same as the prophets of old. From the prophet Amos, let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. From the prophet Micah, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with our God. And may we put our feet to our prayers like the prophet Isaiah admonished. Stop doing wrong, learn to do right. Seek justice, defend the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. And as we do these things, enable our lives to be light that will shine before men, so that may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. God bless you. We don't have to tear down.